Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of America.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero, the show that revolutionizes personal engagement in the world and fortification of your life. Let's get to it. We're brought to you by Fox & Sons, foxandsons.com, the best place to get your BBC. I never start my day with anything less than BBC in my mouth, and I suggest if you like BBC, you go to foxandsons.com, get that big bold coffee, and put it in your mouth. foxandsons.com, promo code 0 at checkout for 18% off on any order $25 or more. That's foxandsons.com for that BBC big bold coffee. Put it in your mouth, baby. And the Marc Clair Show. If you enjoyed Marc Clair with Lions of Liberty, you're going to really dig the Marc Clair Show. Marc Clair has gone beyond the realm of politics to dig into the esoteric meaning of life in all sorts of different avenues, whether it be entrepreneurship, ghosts, goblins, Bigfoot, demonic entities, religion. Marc Clair is diving into all of it, and he's not afraid to tackle any task. So go check out the Marc Clair Show. Thank you, as always, Tom Burton, for the music. And you can find this show and many more at the Libertarian Institute.org. That's the Libertarianinstitute.org. That's where you'll find me, Patrick McFarlane, Scott Horton, Keith Knight, Will Porter, Kyle Anzalone, and a host of other writers like Kim Robinson. Go to libertarianinstitute.org and keep track of everything that we are doing for you. Okay, we are recording. So I am here with Miss Rachel Tobias once again is joining us. How are you doing, Miss Rachel?
Good. Thank you for having me.
And first time on the show, Rose, who we've met, but I've never actually had you on the show. So it's great to have you on here too, Rose.
Thanks, Tommy.
Well, so you ladies are in the midst of a project that y'all have just been, it looks like, just from what I've looked at, it looks like y'all been working on this for a while and been working diligently at getting it like really squared away and have a vision. And I think it took me a little by surprise, and that it seemed so coherent. You know, sometimes people will start things and there'll be a lot of adjustments that need to be made in the process, but it really looks like y'all waited a little while and really kind of drilled down to your focus area and just said, this is what we're doing. And so there was nothing out of the ordinary about it. And I was like, wow, this is great. Cause y'all really have a vision in mind, and it's something to chat about. So, one of you, either one, I don't care who, introduce us to what the project is. It's called the Underground Cotillion, and what it's about and how it's supposed to work and where the idea came from.
So let's start with the history. The purpose of a cotillion, and the cotillion was kind of a Southern tradition. It was to teach respectful manners to people so they can go out in society and thrive. And I think that's missing from our current society. So when Rach and I met a few years ago at Childerberg, so we were friends on Twitter before, we said, this is terminal. We need to help, and we need to structure the right wing high trust society that we keep speaking about. And so we initially started with a matchmaking service because we needed to help right-leaning men speak to women because they don't do that very well. And then I said, we shouldn't stop there. And we always talk about a circular economy. And so our circular economy is a three-pronged system, from matchmaking to self-improvement and courses, ending in right-wing coalition building, because you have the politics, the networking, and everything already built. And that's where it started, and that was our inspiration. Rach, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I just that we want to make it clear this is not necessarily the same thing as like a finishing school, although it has some of those touches. I mean, pretty much when we went to Childerberg, it was so great because we realized how important community was and how nice it was and refreshing to be around like-minded people. We thought, wouldn't it be great if there was more of this? If we could have more meetups, if we could have more engagement, and if we could really find a way to heal society from the ground up. We know that gender relations are not great. We know that there's an attack on the nuclear family. We know that, divorce rates are high and marriage rates are low, and not a lot of people are having children. And you can really see the tearing apart of those foundational building blocks of identity for people and how they have a sense of connection to where they live. So we were looking at all these problems. We thought, what exactly is it that we can do? And as maybe Tommy, you've noticed, I mean, however you want to categorize the right or conservative or anyone who doesn't believe the left's agenda, just gets really pushed into this cul-de-sac where they have no voice. They're blocked off of platforms. We thought, we really need to do something ourselves. We really need to build this high trust community ourselves. And that's where we came up with the idea.
Yeah. I've seen this going happen, not what you're doing, but what you're talking about is the right continues to try to come up with things like Gab or Rumble or things like that. And it just always seems to fall just a tad bit short. Have you looked at like where they're falling short, like what's happening? Why is it falling short? Is this something y'all are guarding against and y'all are able to like kind of compete with?
So I think the problem is not just infrastructure, but the fact that the right wants to isolate. And as an ideology, that's what we do. We isolate, right? We want to be left alone. Well, what we are saying is everything is not just politics, but it's situational awareness of where your community lies. The problem with the right is there is situational awareness. All we do is just spit out information. So which is why we want to reemphasize the point of a circular economy, the concept of kind of like recycling, right? You want your products to be reused and recycled and repaired, right, and remanufactured. Well, in this case, it's not just products, it's services and people. So if you have, let's say, happy families where this starts, you have better relations within the community, right, within the family unit, and you're utilizing the services that your neighbor who has the same ideology as you, you're utilizing their services, you're utilizing their products, and you're kind of like social engineering yourself into a better and positive outcome. We don't see that because the guys from Gab argue with these other guys and these other guys argue with these other guys, and everyone's at a rat race to the top. What we want to do is kind of unite everyone, not to sound like a hippie. And, our business model, though, and I think this is where we differ, is not so much in the forms of competition where we need everyone else to fail. We all succeed because we trump the greatest evil there is. And we don't just trump the state, which everyone wants to say. We provide a solution, which is what these people are not. I mean, social media is great for not getting suspended. And as you know, I had like 9 accounts suspended in the last 3 months on Twitter. Right. Sure. That's great. But we're no longer just in the in the era of information. We should be in the era of maintaining and processing. And that's what Underground Cotillion wants to do. We want to sell exclusivity. We want to be that culture club, right? That's what country clubs used to be. They're no longer there. We want to bring it back.
So Tommy, I just want to make a point here that social media is great for promoting what we're offering, but we're not really competing, as Rose mentioned, with social media. The closest thing would be dating apps per se, but the current dating apps that exist on the market are all mostly owned by Silicon Valley. They show within the framework of how, if you go to any of their websites, you look at how exactly do they operate, they all use AI algorithms. They all sort of are very attached to this dystopian way of doing things that people are just so tired of. And as Rose mentioned, the social engineering, they're selecting people and matching them based on what would make a best left-wing citizen, you know, or who believes in climate change, or who's trans, or who's this. They're not really selecting for healthy long-term relationships. You know, they're just sort of meant to have repeat customers where people are just continually honest. I mean, you ask anybody, everybody hates dating apps, right? So that's what we're competing with. You know, it used to be you could go to your local town and have like a matchmaker where you were matched through friends of friends, but there's just been, I'm not saying that that never exists, but it's really difficult. Yeah, exactly. Those services that used to formally exist really no longer exist. You know, those social fabrics that are super important for a community don't quite exist as much. So what you have left are so-called, even if they're, you know, conservative dating apps like Keeper, they say AI algorithm, right? People are just so hungry for something authentic and genuine and personable and human. They don't really want to be matched based on the algorithm. They're tired of it. So what we're offering is in-person meetups where people can actually meet each other and have a good time. We want to cater to clients that are not left-wing. We want to say, hey, like, you know, if you're gay, if you're trans, our services really aren't for you. Sorry. You know, this is for people that are interested in serious committed relationships. This is people interested in monogamous relationships, interested in long-term, hopefully marriage and family. And what's so great about what we're offering is there's a way to see that it actually works, right? You can see whether people are being matched. You can see whether people are getting married. You can see whether they're having children. And the only other thing aside from dating apps possibly offered is to say to people, hey, go back to religious institutions. But the truth is people are not doing that at a fast enough rate. And most of the women still really exist in urban centers. So even if someone is successful and they manage to leave an urban center and they go to the rural area, they might not have enough people to select from, you know, or if they go to a local church, there might not be many people at that church. I mean, I went to an Eastern Orthodox church a couple weeks ago, locally in Long Island, the oldest one in Long Island. And yes, it was a Sunday and it was a 9:30 liturgy, but there wasn't many people there. You know, so it's kind of like just to say, oh, just do this one thing. We need to take into account like where things exactly are at. And yeah, and again, without genuine human connection, without people, you know, matching, without people having children, there's no future. What future is there for the right?
Go ahead, Rose. What were you saying?
I just wanted to give Rachel the words support and mentorship, right? Because we used to have support and mentorship. We no longer have. Churches used to provide that duty, and the churches have been minimized, for better or for worse, you know, that you can make that judgment. But community was always at the head of the unit, right? We used to be able to rely on our neighbors. Now we can't do that. You can't even knock on your neighbor's property for, you know, and ask them for a cup of sugar, right? That proverbial cup of sugar. And support and mentorship were also at the cornerstones of building up society. Remember, apprenticeship was like that. How are you going to have apprenticeship if you don't have community? If people don't know who you are? You can't just represent yourself by a Twitter persona. It requires V action, face-to-face interaction. This person-to-person element is lacking and severely lacking. And so, as Rachel mentioned, the fact that we don't have these cultural institutions, we've become so befuddled with where we have to go, right? Men are fighting with women, women are fighting with men, and amongst each other, the men are always fighting amongst each other, thinking that laying blame to somebody else is going to fix us. Well, instead of doing all that, why don't we just align on the values we seek and hold dear, right? And to us, it's right-leaning values, right? The post-libertarian values of closed doors, understanding that, an insular society was going to help us and it's going to save us. And this is kind of the framework to regenerate all the good we always speak about and see. And we don't want to just speak about it. We want to build it. We have our own proprietary method on matching people. We have everything written. We just want to go.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate here that it should be very clear to people that no great man immediately, Jesus or otherwise, or Elon Musk is going to jump in and save us. We really, at the end of the day, have to do the work ourselves. And it's easier to maintain trust within a local, smaller sphere. That, Elon Musk taking over Twitter, everybody was like, oh, this is going to be great. There's going to be more freedom on this platform. And it's very clear that he's contributing to this negative social engineering, that he's saying we're going to take away the block button, that we are going to have more engagement. Like, he's basically feeding into the clickbait economy and the fighting and the discourse and the bad behavior. And this is just going to be the trend from the so-called Silicon Valley people that are going to save us, right? Like, it's really, what can we do in our day-to-day lives? And I can't think of anything better than again, matchmaking, self-improvement courses, having in-person meetups, because we should be making moves that will eventually get us away and off of these platforms. Right.
Yeah. And accountability as well, right? All of that is in our system.
It reminds me of when freedom cells first popped up. I don't know if y'all remember the freedom cell movement that popped up. Was it 2-3 years ago or something like that? It sounds like that idea. I think wasn't it Derek Bros that was doing that? That idea that he had to do the freedom cells is kind of like where you are kind of pivoting off of. You're kind of trying to take that kind of vision and move it into a different arena. And I think y'all have the right idea, because family is so important, and building these families correctly and with the right values is so important. So I think the idea y'all are having in assisting in building these families and working in this arena to kind of match make people that kind of have these shared values and these shared purposes in life. And, do y'all take into account the regions that they live in, like, and how accessible they are to each other?
One of the questions we would have would be, are you willing to relocate? Right. And where would you be willing to relocate? Because if we can make a match with someone in, let's say, Wyoming and New York, and it's a hard no on negative 17-degree winters, then they just can't go to Wyoming.
Right. Yeah.
People have preferences, and there's nothing wrong with them. Also, some people like being around cities, right? Whether it's a city like Austin or New York City, it's still a city.
Well, those
right?
people are wrong.
Well, they could be wrong, and that's fine, right? But they don't know when to live, right? But they happen to be right-leaning, and that's fine too. And we have men and women of that sort, so we kind of accounted and we planned for everything.
Yeah. Oh, and something I want to pipe in was part of our initial model. We basically created a Google document of our pitch deck, basically. And part of our idea with enough funding was we could create hubs in various centralized locations. So New York City could be one, Austin could be one. And again, it's not because we're so obsessed with cities. We just recognize still many of the women are in those urban centers. And right. Part of, it's a lot more difficult to find women, especially right-leaning women, than it is right-leaning men. Right. And as much as, and it's a give and take, people kind of love to say, oh, well, if you just take a neutral woman or a left-leaning woman and match her up with a right-wing man, he'll just lead her in a certain direction, right? But I wish it was just that simple. Unfortunately, it isn't necessarily. And so we were thinking of creating these hubs. And as Rose has said, the local economy, what we're looking to do is basically partner with small businesses that own venues. Maybe it's a pub or a bar, maybe it's a dance hall, maybe it's a church, maybe it's different businesses that could affiliate with us. We'll say, hey, let's make a deal. Let's have people, we'll host a meetup here. You'll get foot traffic, you'll get exposure, you'll get clientele. And in exchange, we'll have a venue where we can have people, meet up for an event where they could meet each other. And then this way we give money to the people that are like-minded, such as in 2020, there were various business owners. One was Attila's Gym, that decided to stay open. There were a couple businesses in Long Island that said, screw you, Cuomo, I'm going to stay open. And we want to reward those businesses and say, hey, you did such a great job. Let's become partners. Why don't we give our time and our money and our resources to the people that fought back, or to the people that share those like-minded values with us, right? So
yeah, there was that bar owner up in New York City that got arrested because he had claimed that his bar was an autonomous zone. He was like, screw y'all can't shut me down, I'm an autonomous zone. And they ended up arresting him. I remember that.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's like people really have to have the balls, the cojones, to fight back truly, because the direction where things are headed, I'm certainly not black-pilled, but if we want to see things go in a positive direction, we have to do it ourselves, right? And part of that social engineering in a good direction is facilitating community. I mean, the groups that were able to stick together during 2020, they had an easier time not complying with mandates, right? Whether they were Amish, or whether they're Orthodox Jewish, or whether they were a bunch of ANCAPs in Austin, or however, right? I had joined Freedom Cells and I met a bunch of people from Brooklyn, and we're still a tight-knit community today. So basically, it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. It's hard to do things without just having that community. And I know a lot of people on the right are very allergic or scared of collectivist action, but that's really one of the best ways to move forward.
So the way we want to frame it is, it's not collectivist. It is resource management, right? Because they like to talk about their capitalism. It's resource management with interconnected elements, you guys. Same thing, right? It's just a different type of economics. Well, it just works. The problem is, what do you care what something is if it works? Do you want to be isolated and complain all day? Or do you want to be united with people who are part of your tribe and move forward, create a system, create a foundation to move forward with interconnected elements of societal development? We don't understand why anyone would say no to this project. It's an uphill battle. We all know this, but what's the alternative? Just like sitting back and complaining?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel you. And I appreciate what y'all are doing. I think it's valuable, and I think y'all have some success. I'm thinking about this guy. I can't remember the guy's name for the life of me that I saw in an interview. He's a Canadian. He wrote a book about America's next civil war, or new civil war. Can't remember exactly what it was called. But he said basically what we're dealing with right now is we're dealing with a situation in which those that are deemed left are more interested in a multicultural democracy, whereas those that are deemed right are interested in maintaining a constitutional republic. And I can't help but think that back when the country was founded in the 1700s, 1800s, the communities were separated by religious values, right? So Catholics and Protestants, they didn't live in the same towns. They were neighboring towns, and they interacted and they traded with each other, but they didn't live together. And here, where we're at in 2023, all these different ideals are just compacted into these areas that we call cities. I call hell, y'all call cities. And that creates the anxiety and the division and all the infighting that you see, that if you self-segregate by your beliefs, your cultures, your virtue, your morality, then you're in a much better place, a much happier place, and there won't be so much division. And so it seems like what y'all are trying to do is do that online and create this kind of self-segregating society online. And it's going to be interesting to see how it actually translates into the real world and how these people are actually able to interact in the real world. That would be something I would be really interested in following up on.
So one point of contention, we don't want to build it online. Sure, we're going to have, I guess, a reference app, but the point is to counter everything that the WEF, right, and the state wanted to do 20, and that's keep us isolated and at home in front of a computer. What we want to do is bring everyone out of their home, interacting face to face. Right. So one of the things that we were thinking about is, right, cooking, like literally breaking bread. When you break bread with people you don't even like, it's so much nicer because the act of eating and making something together has always been instrumental in creating that closeness and that tight-knit community, right? When no one's poisoned and everyone flourishes, you're like, okay, this is
please
fine.
Don't poison anybody.
Right. Well, that's kind of where it came from. And in order to segregate people, right, like that's when poisoning started happening and you had less heads of state kind of meeting together. I mean, like saying that for historical reference, but here, right, showing someone how to cook, I don't know, like a flatbread pizza, right? Something very simple. And I know that this is a conversation close to your heart because your wife makes great food. I'm such a fan. But that's how we got closer on Twitter and Facebook, because we would always interact on each other's food posts, because I do the same thing. Cooking is so paramount to building relations, as I said. And we want to, right, we want to foster that friendship, but we also want to explain to people, right, like the next steps, right? And some of the next steps are not just culture building, but also becoming better as a person, education, right? Because not everyone knows how to budget. People how to budget. I can teach people, right, process and kind of creating metrics for success. And these are skill sets a lot of people don't have. And so the more we implement all these like little interconnected elements, the better our society will be and the stronger society will be. And so when you interact face to face, it becomes so much better, right? Like that's the key to realizing our vision.
Yeah, I just want to pop in here, Tommy. Sorry. I just want to say, so we're looking to fundraise for certain things like necessary evils, right? Like we have a Give, Send, Go, so we can fundraise for a website, so we can fundraise for an app and all of the software associated, and customer service, and also IT security, and like all those things are necessary. As much as I hate apps within the current market, like I said, it's a necessary evil to be somewhat online and accessible. However, the goal is to get people to meet in person and to eventually get off the app, maintain them as a community member in general, but to create these in real life business affiliations with small venues, right? That's what we're looking to do. And with enough funding, we're also looking to have actual hubs in localities, right? And another part of our project, in addition to, just reiterating the matchmaking services, self-improvement courses, the meetups, things like this, we're looking to eventually get into coalition building with our project and to have voter blocks and to say, hey, yes, we want to have a solid foundation and a community to be able to sway local politics and to be able to push things in a certain direction, whether that's looking for lowering of taxes, whether that's protecting people through, children through school boards and saying, no, we don't want your degenerate materials in school, whether that's building homeschooling, foundations or different things. It's just a lot easier to do if people are organized and centralized in that way.
Like the pods kind of the educational pods that they're doing right now, where it's like 4 or 5 families get together, hire a teacher, and they just kind of put their kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing, and we have specifically right-leaning values. So while I think that the Free State Project has a lot right, in the sense that, hey guys, let's all move to a smaller location and we can, build off of there and have more sway and care about local culture and stuff. What's so great about our project is we're starting from a position of right-leaning values. We're saying, hey, I know you love freedom, but we need to be able to agree with how to spend that freedom. What does that community look like? And if you want high trust, you have to engage in certain like socially acceptable behaviors. And yes, that's going to be narrowed down. I don't have time to argue with people about, how we shouldn't have adults be naked around kids. I don't have the time, right? Like, that's awful. I went to Pork Fest this year. It's great. I understand, that there's a community and it's there and it exists and there are some wonderful people, but I want to start exactly from a place where we all agree, yeah, that's not okay, right? I don't want to waste time like arguing with people about this. So basically, the whole point of having, our matchmaking service and these foundations, and to have the hubs and basically the coalition, is we're already starting off from that place of what is or is not acceptable in these communities, right? So we're trying to bypass a lot of issues right from the start.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense, because and up until 5 minutes ago, like 98% of us all agreed. Like, it's just all of a sudden all these things change and you're like, what are you talking about? Like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Where is this idea coming from? And it's like, all the wars were thought up in universities and higher education, and it seems like all the degeneracy was too. It was like they go hand in hand, and it's crazy.
Yeah. Everything's a blueprint. Everything's a blueprint for worse outcomes, right? It's positive for them to have us fighting, right? It's like a net positive for them. It's great for them because it brings them success and money. And all it does, it keeps the masses downtrodden. And I want to just say, like, yeah, it's unfortunate for people, but that's why we're working so hard to preserve our communities and our kinds of people, right? Because I can't save the world. I can't be a savior for everyone. What we're trying to do is provide a service and kind of a contingent for our people who understand our outcomes. And there's enough of us for us to be recognized and for people to join our movement, because I think it's imperative. And from there, we kind of want to designate, let's say, local politicians, and maybe kind of change the voting spectrum framework to not be democratic, because we all understand democracy is it's a detriment.
And also, I want to specify, like,
could we just at the very least, women get 3/5 of a vote? Can we just agree on
that? They get 3/5 the vote, but they get full access to the kitchen and ownership of the kitchen.
Fair.
So it's a deal.
Yeah.
And the men don't get Twitter. So if women get 3/5 of the vote, gotta stay off of Twitter. And I'm okay with that.
Twitter doesn't exist anymore. That's gonna be easy. It's X now.
I'm still call it Twitter.
You know what? I'm okay with staying off of that. As soon as I saw what Elon Musk's plan was for it, and he changed it over and it started calling it X, I was like, yeah, you're not going to see me on there very often anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing, like, if Elon is shitty to his own children and names his children like these awful, awful names, how do you think he's going to treat the rest of us? Like, even less.
He's literally black.
The guy that wants to put Neuralink in your brain and read all your thoughts is not exactly about freedom and your friend. That's the thing. I think that there's this, industrialization times 1,000 on steroids push, right? And I think having Substacks and podcasts are great, but our long-term goal should be getting offline, right? Our long-term goal is finding the others and moving like more and more offline and having those local affiliations, because that's what's going to feed you on a day-to-day basis. And us as women understand it's so great to see people tread Twitter talk about having 5 children, all this stuff, but we know it takes a village. Like, that part is true. We can't let the left own that phrase. Like, that part is so crucial, whether it's extended family or whether it's friends or direct family. I mean, you need really like this whole support system. And another thing too is people talk about, you know, white birth rate decline, and they talk about great replacement and these things, and sort of like, you know, we obviously see on the degenerate media is like, oh, why don't you just replace everyone with migrants? We'll just shove people from this country to here and it'll be fine. We'll replace everyone. It's like, well, if you do want more babies and if you want more white babies, you have to have a support network to facilitate that. It doesn't help to just say to just kick people when they're down, when things are tough, and to shame them and just say, oh, where's your 10 kids? When we have this awful culture and environment. And I'm not trying to displace blame or accountability, but I am saying the reality situation is, if you want that healthy community, whatever that looks like, you have to have that support. There's really no other way around it.
I had a friend of mine, smart guy, like the type of person you want to have a lot of kids, you know, like his offspring would be good people. And he told me the reason I'm 50 years old and I don't have any kids is because I didn't want to bring children into this world. And I said, you know, it's always the good people that think that way. And the less good people having children, the worse the world gets. And so the only way to offset that downward spiral is for the good people to engage and interact and be involved in these ways and have these children.
Tommy, do you remember the Idiocracy? Do you remember the opening?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember the movie Idiocracy? And do you remember the opening scene?
I never saw a movie called Idiocracy. I did watch a documentary called Idiocracy.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I mean. In that documentary, I was going to say, if you've never seen it, we should do a movie. But in that documentary, that's the opening of the film. The people are waiting, right, to have all their resources and their ducks in a row. Yep. And by the time something happens, it's either too late or they're like, we're exhausted. And the bad people, right, the Shaquanas and the Shaniquas, right, the X's, they're populating en masse. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, you tip the scales, which is why we want to, at least if the scales are tipped, at least ensure a better outcome. And
I don't know. I would probably rather a President Camacho over Biden right now.
Sure, right. We would have a lot more electrolytes. It's what plants crave.
It is what plants crave.
But in reality, it's the same thing.
I need to get me a Brondo 2024 hat.
But and again, we're not, you know, reinventing the wheel. It's the building blocks of civilization, truly, right? In maintaining those high trust societies. I mean, everyone talks about wanting this utopia and wanting this high trust society. And our project, like, we can't promise utopia, but we can promise a very focused vision. We know exactly what our goals are. We know exactly what the metrics of success would look like. And these are things that impact people on a day-to-day life. I mean, I can't imagine something more impactful than the partner that you're with, or whether or not you have children, and those decisions in the surrounding community, basically. You know, I really can't think of something.
The closest thing to utopia we can have is collaboration. About it, connecting people with complementary skills, resources, right? It's kind of like what we're doing with matchmaking, with love, sure, but then the next step is implementing that exact I guess, process flow into something with an economy, something with a service, something with a good, right? No one has to be worried about having a brewery that says, you know, I hate the state, or like, you know, down with Weimar beer, right? Like you can do this and people will support it. And, you know, you're bringing back culture, you're bringing back humor, you're bringing back a way of life where people don't have to walk, you know, quietly in the proverbial attic.
Yeah. And we're offering people an out. We're saying you don't have to just be reactionary. You don't have to just engage in clickbait and waste your time. You don't have to be blackpilled and frustrated. Spend that time and energy and resources on thinking about those future generations in addition to the here and now, right? Like, you know, anything else is kind of like cheap. Like, we're not pushing stupid Liberty mugs from China on you. You know, that's not what we're looking to do. Yeah.
I like my Liberty mugs from China, damn it.
Well, we'll make one, Tommy. We will make you one for your birthday.
Give Hong Kong a second amendment.
You can use those in the shooting ranges,
right?
But absolutely, again, it's like I don't see a solution that doesn't incorporate community and locality in some sort of fashion. You know what I mean? And as much as everyone has this dream, a lot of men have this dream of like living in a bunker in Arizona. I'm sorry, that's not necessarily going to cut it to have a family. You know, it takes so much more than that, and that isolationist view. It just on a day-to-day basis. And again, it's like, what is that praxis? And you can tell whether something works based on whether it works like in your day-to-day life. If it doesn't work in your day-to-day life, it's probably not going to work scaled up.
I'm pretty sure that was the first subtle Adam Kokesh call out on my podcast.
No. No. You know what the sad thing is? That's not only his dream. that is many of people's dream. And you know, I've known people who've had this dream, not just Adam or whatever, and Anarcho-Coco is great, and conferences and festivals are great. But again, what we're looking for is to improve the quality of people's lives day to day, not just like every once a year or something of that nature. And, you know, the current dating apps are not reliable. There's not enough people going to religious institutions. So we have to really start somewhere. And if we don't address birth rate, if we don't address like the divorce rate, if we don't address like the current gender wars and discourse, like I don't know what people are doing, right? Who cares about whether Trump or DeSantis wins 2024? We all know that there was rampant election shenanigans, however you want to categorize that, right? Like, so it's just like, well, what can you as a person do, right? And what matters? And these are the things that matter.
Right. If you don't want to, that kisses the Wailing Wall, become your own independent hub. And the only way to do it is connecting with people. You have to be in a place where it's almost irrelevant, you know, who the president is. That's what we're trying to offer. And if people just got off their bullshit for 2 seconds and said, you know what, it would be great if we could unite for a better outcome. People are just so ingrained with, you know, bringing someone else down, regardless of it being just malevolent for them as well, and just the downside for their family. But that's how people operate. That's their standard base operating procedure. And if that's part of your algorithm, you've already been psyoped, and that's a problem.
Right. And here's the thing, like I love certain journalists, I love content creators, I love information and education, entertainment and all that. But there's so many people we need in that particular space. And in addition, it's like, okay, we need something tangible rather than just in like continuous abstract sharing of information. As much as I love speakers, as much as I love conferences and this, like, okay, once you understand the general basis of what's going on and why, what exactly are you going to do about it? And Freedom Cells was a good model, but the difference between our project and Freedom Cells was Freedom Cells, again, incorporated the general libertarian values of freedom. It wasn't necessarily specific and culturally leaning right. And that's fine. I'm not criticizing it for that. And it also didn't offer matchmaking services. I mean, that wasn't really something that was like focused on with that project, right?
Mm.
So again, it's like these things are so foundational and important. And without paying attention to those things, without paying attention to how we're building the future, I don't quite know what people are doing.
I was talking to Justin last week, Justin Campbell, and we were chatting about kind of my evolution and what's occurred with me over the last few years. And I told him, I said, I realized, like, once I got when I was over the road and I was stuck in that truck all day long, it was just me and my dog, you know. And yeah, I'd get on the phone and I would talk to Beatrix every night for, 45 minutes or an hour before we went to bed. But she was working all day, I was driving all day, and the really only outside interaction I had was online. And online felt so real at that time because I was so isolated. And this is something y'all are talking about. And that when I came home, and even though I don't do a whole lot outside the house, like if I'm not at work, I'm usually home. I'm not, unless I'm going to church on Sunday, but that's pretty much it, man. I go to work, I come home, I go to church, I come home. That's it. I don't do a whole lot, but just that constant interaction and building the relationships with people on a personal level in real life has made such a difference, not only to the way I interact online, the way I conduct my podcast, but to my mental health. I feel a lot better about life being involved with real interaction on a real level and with real people. They know I have a podcast. They know I write some political stuff. They know I'm involved in that. Every once in a while, somebody will say something, but they're not like overly like absorbed in that world. And it's like any engagement I have online, like Twitter, it's all about, oh, what you did on this episode, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I'm a real guy, man. I have real interests. I do real things. Like, it's not all abstract and talking about all this crap that just typically just pisses me off most of the time. So yeah, and then on top of that, let's add another layer to this conversation. I believe that what began the destruction of the family unit and is the creation of the nuclear family. By getting rid of that extended family, that you lowered a lot of the barricades that were stopping the splitting up of marriages and the stresses of life to overtake these married couples. And that by what you are talking about, reincorporating this huge, large community structure and this internal kind of like bond on top of matchmaking, like in combination, they're working together to do both these things at the same time, that you will see much less, like a lower divorce rate through the model that y'all are projecting out there.
Yeah. And that's something that we wrote about in our pitch deck, because that's first and foremost to our project, right? If you don't have a happy life, if you don't have a happy community, just like your friend, why would you want to procreate? Why would you breed? You're so insular and you're so depressed, right? And you see all of these influencers on social media, and they're selling you lies, and you're buying those lies, and you're saying, well, I'm just not enough. And we're trying to say, well, you don't have to be enough, right? Nobody's enough. You're doing well, right? Because we are trying to remodel kind of a standard, because the standards have been so corrupt. And if you don't have, or if you can't live up to a certain standard, that's precisely why we we offer courses, and not courses on, the exploration of feminism or the exploration of masculinity. All right, we have that data, we have that information. If you don't know it, I think you're straying, you're on the bottom curve. No, what we're offering you is some very real literacy skills, financial skills, emotional intelligence is a skill that so many people, or so few people, possess. Understanding how to deal with either conflict resolution, mitigate problems, create some sort of leadership. People don't know how to do that.
Another,
what I see is people say,
one course
Yeah.
that I think y'all would be, it would benefit y'all like a lot if you would offer a course in writing resumes.
Yes, that's absolutely something that we wanted to offer. Again, if you can't dictate what your skills are or what your resolutions are, it's over. So what we want to do is, again, like financial literacy, including investment, right? Doing everything we've done, including, create a pitch deck, create a business plan, create a financial model, show potential investors what you can do, right? Again, this is all part of that support and mentorship program that I spoke about earlier, right? Like there's so many rabbit holes people can go down, right? When we were writing our business plan, we spoke about profit sharing partnerships, revenue sharing agreements, things of that nature. Because I've worked as an analyst, I've been a consultant, right? I've created my own frameworks, I've created methods that have not been considered. And so if we apply the same types of applications, because everything is analogous to everything else. I've often said, in order to build a great team, you need to know the dynamic of the team and what the goal you're working for. Because if you think you're building the same exact team for a product launch as you are for some sort of technical software, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. And a lot of people have that approach, right? And that's why I think so many people are not getting matched with the proper jobs, right? It's funny you mentioned resumes, because it speaks to the inherent process, and the process is broken because everyone's just like keyword, keyword, keyword. That's AI, and that's why it fails. We are not keywords. We're sensible beings. And sometimes we can't fit with, the entire pack. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you might need to purpose or restructure your team or facets of who you are. And there's not a problem with that. And that's another message we want to put forward, right? Again, we have so many solutions. We just need people to invest in us.
Right.
And we can just start. We can go to the moon.
Rose, what is our Give Send Go? What's our link to our Give Send Go?
Building bridges. Matchmaking, building bridges. Yeah. That was instrumental in creating our message and crafting our message. Everything that we with purpose and intent, right? You have no idea. I mean, sure, Rachel and I our friendship involves talking about this on a daily basis with jokes.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan.
Iconic about it.
I'm a big fan of Owen Benjamin, and he talks about spell breaking, right? And we see so many psyops and things thrown in our direction. And for me, at least personally, one of the best ways to deal with nonsense and psyops thrown in our direction is to say, what is this producing, right? What am I producing, right? You talked about your friend who doesn't want to have kids. And I think about everything the left does results in death, right? Death of a lineage, death of a legacy, death of death and destruction. And the right is supposed to resemble and stand for and venerate life, right? And God has been so removed from the secular community and society and culture and whatever, and it's just hyper materialistic. We've talked about this ad nauseum on podcasts, but I can't think of a better way to engage in venerating life than rebuilding that family network. Like you said, it is a shame that so many people had to work because of inflation, and also put their children, assuming they're having children at all, putting their children in daycare that would have normally been watched by great grandparents or grandparents. It is sad. And we kind of see everyone encouraged to sell the family house, throw each other on the bus, and just chase that wizard paper. right? Like it is so sad, because at the end of the day, it's like, what's the point? Why not be a rootless cosmopolitan if you don't have anything, if you don't have an identity or basis, if it doesn't matter where you are, if everything's the same. So we're trying to really refocus back on those building blocks of civilization and what's important and how to build that. And that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, that takes effort and funding and people. And we're still looking for people for like a board of directors. We have some people in mind. We've been working on that. We're looking to fundraise and other things, because all of this takes real investment, putting your money where your mouth is. If you want to see a high trust society, you have to build it. I mean, there's really just no other substitute for that.
Mm. So
and I think about how much B matters to you, how much your children matters to you, and your children's future, right? The generation's future. Like it's so great that people have Substacks and things now, and that's important, that information, that entertainment, but we really have to keep taking things to a place where we can see that impact on a day-to-day level of something people can functionally do, whether, I know Christians like to say, by their fruits you shall know them, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, what is the fruits of the right? What is the right producing?
Neocons.
Right.
So y'all have mentioned something a couple of times, so like let's touch on this a little bit and see if we can't like dig in just a tad before we have to get off of here. You're talking about the way the household's structured. You brought up daycare a while ago instead of grandparents. Well, another thing that's changed since the 70s is we have 2-income households, right? And whether that income is a mother and a father or a mother and the government, you're going to have 2-income households. That's just the way it works. It seems very difficult with the way that the currency and the economy is being structured, is being manipulated by the elites and those in power, that we're going to end up in a situation in which 1-income household is the norm once again, at least in the near future. It's not saying it's impossible further down the road, but in the near future, it doesn't seem like 1-income household is going to be the norm once again. Are y'all working on any sort of project keeping mothers in homes through working remotely? Like Beatrix, she works from home. She doesn't go into an office. My mom now works from home. She doesn't go into an office anymore. With the advancements in technology, this is something that could be taken advantage of to teach mothers how to kind of manipulate the system or prioritize staying at home, working from home, and still having that secondary income coming in to assist.
Absolutely. Well, this is why financial literacy is of the utmost importance. If you can teach, right, the man and the woman of the household how to create investments, maximize investments, right, and kind of keep going upward, because without these resources, nothing is happening. So yeah, sure, women can have remote jobs and, stay home and care for their kid. But if you have resources because of the investment structure or the investment teach you how to do, this kind of solves the problem, right? This is how families can spend more time with each other, more time with their kids, more time with their communities, right? Fostering relationships and having growth, right? It's not, a one person upstart. It's everyone has to benefit from this. So by including, let's say, some sort of investment classes. And I have a Facebook group of like 200K people of stock and crypto investments. And it certainly, helped a lot of people. And, we're working on doing like just different education models there. This is something that kind of helped keep me afloat during the pandemic, right? I didn't come from a family, like I'm a refugee. I wasn't born in this country. My parents weren't born in this country. We came here with literally nothing. So when I purchased first property, I didn't have my family to help me invest in anything. I kind of had to learn everything on my own. And I know how hard it is, but I just had no one to rely on. And that feels awful, right? So I don't want to have people feel the same way I do. So this is why we offer so many different courses and upstarts and help, right? Again, these are the things that I wish I was taught and didn't have to finagle my way through. But this is the situation we're in, right? That's why public school doesn't work, right? I mentioned this a lot on my Twitter account, right? Mathematical thinking is so important because we still do need architects. We do need builders. And because the access to information is so easy, people don't want to utilize the other part of their brain to improve themselves. And this is part of, right, the agenda. This is part of social engineering. It's to keep you down. What we're doing is inverting their inversion. That's, we just want to help.
Right.
I just want to specify, I really want the right to unionize against wizard paper, because the thing is, like, I know we need wizard paper to fund our project, and there's a certain amount of push-pull. There's a certain amount of, like, things we have to engage in that are not my ideal, right, in this way. But overall, I think that working from home is good in the short term. I think it's bad in the long term, because I think in the long term overall, it's designed to, and yes, we can take advantage of it, and there's kind of this moment, but I think in the long term, the ultimate outcome of that, at least from their negative social engineering aspect, is to get everyone connected 24/7 in the pod, surveillance 24/7, that kind of thing, and to also say maintain that 2 or more person income forever kind of thing, right? So I really, it's like difficult, because it's like, how do we navigate utilizing the technology we have to eventually try to, like, take things back to a place? We'll never ever be able to just 100% replicate the way that things were, but we can have a certain direction and be mindful of that. I think, like, once again, it is, I don't deny that it's been helpful for people to work from home. I think long term, I just want to see people have that face-to-face work and interaction, and a single, person income household kind of thing with generational help. The less dependent we are on wizard paper, the more we can unionize against that, and the more dependent we are on each other instead for goods and services, the easier I think it is to try to avoid some of the goy slap and some of the traps and some of the nonsense that's been put out there on us, right? Like, it's easier to say no to a mandate if you have that community that supports you. And that's just, I can't really think of, like, a solution or a workaround of that, in terms of where things are going and how to navigate that. So but you have to start somewhere. And the way to start somewhere is to be mindful of those building blocks and to be mindful of what works and what doesn't, really. So if we're going to go back to extended families, then we have to go back to certain values, and we have to go back to, like, unionizing against the wizard paper. I'm happy Bitcoin exists. I'm happy alternative currencies exist. But at the same time, like, if we're not, I'm not sitting here saying it's super easy to be self-sufficient and grow all our own food, but the more dependent we are on, like, local goods and services that share our values, the better off we're going to be to withstand any kind of, like, nonsense. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And you should be people that are capable. I'm not going to say, paint with a broad brush here, but people that are capable to spend a little bit more money to shop locally and get away from the Walmarts and the Amazons really should be more mindful about doing that. And I try to be. I'm not perfect. I shop at Amazon still, and every once in a while I have to go to Walmart because it's the only place that sells African black soap, which Beatrix insists on using. So, it's like, all right, so I still have to do these things, but I do try to be more mindful about shopping local and getting away from the big box stores. Go ahead, Rose. I'm sorry.
Right. So we always talk about something called user awareness, right? You want to be skeptical of unsolicited requests, right? Especially when they ask for your personal information. And that's kind of what Walmart does and Amazon does. And people, right, especially on the right, see, I don't mind if this is something you want to do, but if you're going to be a hypocrite about this, at least acknowledge your hypocrisy and kind of move forward. So one thing people on the right do is they just talk about things without being aware. And so what we also want to bring is that kind of like user awareness of supplementing the Walmarts and the Amazons with your own insular economy, with your friends, your family, your neighbors, and people you can just at least interact and engage with without wondering if they're going to betray you or, you know, tell the state that you're not wearing a mask or tell the state that, you know, you haven't reported all your income. That's important.
I'm a big fan of sustainability and not in this fake climate change way. You know, I'm a big fan of being mindful of resources.
So you're the one who wrote Agenda 2030.
Well, you're the one that mentioned Jordan Peterson writing a book about civil war with America, him or Stefan Maloney, one of the two, someone from Canada, as you mentioned. But
oh no, it wasn't those guys. I don't remember the guy's name.
Yeah,
I keep wanting to say it was Mark Kelly, but I'm not sure I'm right.
I know they're, well, all Canadians are subversive, so it doesn't matter anyway who it was. But I was gonna say, like, I like going to a lot of clothing swaps because I don't have to give my money to fast fashion, and I don't have to give my money to these big stores or to Amazon. I can actually exchange things, you know, goods within a certain locality. I love going to like the local farm by me and going to farmers markets and vending markets and different hand markets, and it is a little pricier and it's tough, but I know my money is going to like this person for their goods and services. And I know that face and I know that name. And like, usually they have a family, like that's awesome. Right. And I live in an incorporated village where the mayor lives here. You know, a bunch of people like that are in local politics live where they are and they're invested where they are. And that's so nice. You know, there are more rules and more taxes, but at the same time, I can see the actual impact of that. And I can see they actually care about and invest in where they live, right? So it's just being mindful of these things and kind of saying, okay, again, what is it that we're actually producing and how are we working on day-to-day things? Because nobody is just going to come along and fix things for us automatically, you know, or overnight.
Well, I don't know. The Federal Reserve is doing a good job of trying to get rid of that wizard money for you. They just want to replace it with CBDCs. So, you know, I mean, they might be more right wing than we thought.
Still wizard money, just can't touch it.
All right. Well, we've been going an hour. Y'all want to give some closing remarks on this and plug away whatever you got to plug. And I'll make sure I get some links in the description.
Thank you. So we are looking for investors, whether you can invest, you know, $5 or way more and be on our board of investors. We have a business plan. We have a lot of links that we can share. We're really looking for some help and resources to put and push our project forward. So information helps. So if you want to connect us to someone, we will take it. If you want to help us out, give us some money on their Gifts and Go. Again, unfortunately, resources and that wisdom money is important to defining the structure. But thanks so much for having us on your podcast, Tommy. Rach, you got anything else?
What is the Gifts and Go?
That's our fundraiser, and it's kind of like a GoFundMe, but this is a right-wing fundraiser.
Right, but what's the link? I'm sorry.
Oh, we'll send it to you, or I think Rach might have sent it to you with all the links.
Yeah, I sent it to you in the links, and it's basically Gifts and Go, the Underground Cotillion, I believe.
Okay.
And our Twitter account got nuked.
Of course it did. Look,
matchmaking.
Look, one of you on your own can't keep a Twitter account running. I like both of y'all together. That's a disaster.
There's wanted posters for us everywhere. They can't afford color, so it's all black and white. Old school. But basically, you can reach me on Twitter while it still stands, Rachel D. Tobias, or Office of Existential Management, because this is part of exactly what we talk about, is managing existentialism and managing, spirituality and community and everything that matters. Let's see, we're trying to work on our website, and absolutely just any sort of funding matters, resources, social networking, all of that really matters for our project. And thank you so much for having us on. I really appreciate it, Tommy.
Yeah, this was fun.
I'm on Facebook for under Rose Pinochet, and on Instagram on Rose Pinochet. So
so you still survive on you exist on Meta. So
I'm like, I can listen. I have people making me Twitter accounts every day. I'll include my app for you guys.
All right. I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.